Design Ops Aligned podcast is sponsored by Workpage. Replace your scattered tool stack with one system tool that brings all your digital project work to one single place, so you can focus on delivering value and get everyone on the same page.
Five, four, three, two, one. I'm gonna keep that in, yeah. Welcome everyone to another Design Ops Aligned podcast, season 3. I've been offline for a very, very long time, and it's now time to get back on the scene. And I am welcomed by a very special guest by the name of Reginé Gilbert, who's decided to kick off our season 3 with a very good subject today. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion with Reginé as we deep dive into accessibility and its kind of, how should you say, its challenges in today's industry. So welcome, Reginé.
Thank you. Really happy to be here with you.
Yeah, we finally got around to doing this, and
yeah,
I'm not going to lie to you. We got it together. I mean, Reginé came to it was a few months ago, actually quite a while ago. So I'm glad to be back on this, and I think it's a great subject to kick off season 3 with. I've had some really great guests who've spoken about accessibility. I've had Megan Thomas, I've had Stephanie Walker, and I really want to get your take on this subject because, well, how should I phrase this? I want to kick off this podcast in this first question. Do you think right now there is a lot of attention on accessibility due to the fact that we've had, well, I think not recently, but a while back, we've just put in a law in EU where accessibility is a requirement on most digital products? Now, I want to get your take on that.
So I think the answer is a classic answer for you would get from any designer, which is it depends on who you ask, right? If you ask people who work for certain companies, they don't know anything about it. Other people know things about it. And so I think it really depends. In the United States, there is an actual law, right, that has taken place, in other countries as well. But in Europe, it's still kind of new-ish. But people know about it, but it's like there's an awareness, but we have to move to an actionable place.
But then let me take 2 stabs at this. Do you think... Okay, actually, let me rephrase this question, because I've actually asked this question before. And I wanted to start with the groundworks on this. Do you think it's the responsibilities of designers to be more aware of accessibility demands and to bring that into their design aesthetics, as they do with responsive design? So let me paint the picture for you. You know, when responsive design came out, we're talking my age here now, it became then the norm to always design for all those breakpoints. It's part of our design aesthetics. But what I tend to see, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't see designers really adhering to key accessibility guidelines as part of their design aesthetics. Now, would you say that today's industry is more aware now, and now it's becoming as part of people's design ethics on a day-to-day basis?
It's a mixed bag. I think that there are people who know about it. I think a lot of people still don't know about it. It depends on the education they got. It depends on what their team prioritizes. For some teams, like when you are working in finance or banking, for example, there are things that you have to follow. when you are creating maybe a social media site or you're working on other things, it may not be as important. However, people are doing it without calling it accessibility necessarily, making sure that there's captions for those videos on social is accessibility, right? Oh, I can't see that text. It's really hard with those colors, right? That's color contrast. It's not necessarily that people are calling out accessibility specifically, but they are calling out usability issues. So I think that there is, again, there's that mixed bag of it not being this formal thing like we're doing accessibility, more so we're doing from a usability perspective, making sure things are right.
I'm going to play devil's advocate with the whole topic of accessibility. I think a lot of product managers in today's day and age, or how should you say, in today's industry, look at accessibility as not a roadblocker, but an additional requirement that's needed on their product, which they can kind of push to a later time. Now, I use that sentence in such a way because I don't want to paint all product managers in the sense that they don't see the need of it, but they kind of see it as something that they can push to a further release due to capacity or technical feasibility or the kind of cost it does take to fix accessibility issues. Now, would you say that these product managers are not seeing the benefits of having an accessible product from your perspective?
Well, this is a real general, and I'm not, this context matters, right? And situations matter. And so what I will say is, do people care about accessibility? From what I see, no. I'm going to be completely real. I don't think that people do care until they do. And so oftentimes it is something that people think is extra work. So are a lot of things. So is implementing a design system. It's extra work the first time you do it. It's not as bad the 5th time you do it. The 10th time you do it, it becomes a little bit easier. The 20th time you do it, it's a lot easier. The 50th time you do it, it becomes part of your workflow. So when people challenge me and say, well, it's extra work, okay, I'm not saying that you're wrong. It definitely is the first time, the 5th time, the 10th time, the 20th time, no. The 50th time, no. So yes, something can be extra work, but it's not extra work the entire time once you get it implemented into your workflow, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, I want to dive into that because you mentioned it does come down to repetitive actions on, hey, the first time, the 5th time, the 10th time. But do you think it's because product managers don't have that bandwidth to try out the first time, the 5th time, the 10th time, and the 20th time to then bring that kind of design aesthetics into their product?
Okay, meanwhile, there's a huge backlog of things, right, that don't work the first time, right? So these things always bubble up and come back. Oh, we've done all the things that we needed to do, and we have this backlog now. So the excuse of like that it's extra time, I fully understand, and I'm not saying it's wrong. What I am saying is, if you don't try, how do you know? And a lot of people will stop even before they try, but every single product manager has a backlog as well, right?
Yeah.
And they eventually, hopefully, the goal is to get rid of that backlog.
Yes, definitely. I think if any product manager doesn't aim to try and clear that backlog, they're not really a product manager. But then what comes down to it, what really does come down to it is, what is my return on investment? If I'm going to allocate resources from a development team and a product team and from a design team to fix these issues, it's always the question that comes to product managers. What's the bottom line? Are you matching the bottom line? Are you going over the bottom line with their features? And it's really hard sell for product managers to show the return of investment on accessibility. Now, what would you say to a lot of product managers who might be listening to us who are in that same situation?
I'll say this, and this is just my personal feeling about talking to adults. I am not here to convince any adult to change their mind, ever. That's not what I do. But I will challenge you and I will ask questions, right? So one of the benefits of accessibility is that you add value. You get more people to use your product when things are more accessible, right? And so when I was, an active practitioner of user experience design and somebody came and said, oh, we want to add this, we want to add that, my question was always, what value is that bringing, right? So if we fix an accessibility issue, how many more users could we actually be getting? How much more money could we be getting if we got those more users? When you talk about the return on investment, that's a return on investment right there. The amount of time that it would take you to fix some of these issues is minimal.
Yeah.
But the return could be quite big. The more people you have, the less friction they have, the easier something is to use. What's the problem?
But that's it. Do you think that's the issue with design teams? They can't quantify the data to show the return of investment, to get the buy-in.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, yes, to answer, yes. I think a lot of times, like things like accessibility can be difficult to quantify because you don't actually know how many people are getting blocked from using something in the first place, let alone unblocking that thing and then seeing how many people can engage. That data in general doesn't exist. But you know what exists? You know what I love to go and look at? Reddit. I love to look at Reddit and see people complaining about a product to be like, hey, you know what? People didn't really like this thing. And back in the day when I worked in e-commerce, I would go and look at customer reviews. I would talk to the customer service team, especially they were gold. Customer service team to talk to was gold because they gave me data that the data analytics team could not, because they were giving me the real feedback, right? So you're understanding like, oh, I didn't get that from the survey we put out, or data analytics didn't share that information, but the customer service team told me XYZ. So I think getting that information and having that and then being able to fix those things, you do see little increases that could lead to big things down the line.
But that's, I'll take it from my experience, and my experience of working with people who are very kind of accessible. Okay, how can I put it in a better word? They're very advocate in the way products should be accessible. And again, this is just from my experience. They preached what needed to be accessible, but again, why I felt that it fell on deaf ears to people outside of the design team is because they weren't able to quantify it, or they weren't able to give concrete answers on the technical feasibility or the technical capacity that's going to be needed. And that's what I think also might detriment them. Yes, from a design perspective, it's so easy to change colors. It's so easy to, make stuff contrast, etc., etc., etc. But if you have a system or a design system which is already implemented, and a legacy system as well, if you're working on legacy applications, product managers want to hear that data on what needs to be fixed, how much capacity is going to be needed, and again, what is my return on investment? But these design teams lacked that conviction or that data to get buy-in. So what would you say to people if they want to be an advocate of accessibility and they're going through the aspect of working on legacy applications or working on just new applications? What would you advise them on?
Well, I'll tell a story because that's what I like to do.
Go for it.
In my past, I've had students who have taken my courses where in my courses that I've taught, my students have always worked with a real life client. Those clients have accessibility needs, and that's where they learn hands-on how to do certain things. Once they have gone out into the workforce, they are like real champions of accessibility, working on teams who don't care about it. And I've had people sometimes in tears, sometimes super frustrated. And I have had to say to them, sometimes you don't fight for it because you need this job, you have student loans to pay off, right? Or sometimes I say, and a lot of times I say, when people ask me about I want to do accessible stuff. I said, then don't call it accessibility.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
now my biggest thing is don't call it that. And people can get upset and whatnot, and that's their choice because that's their right. However, I think that there's ways to approach accessibility. Recently, I had a person who works for a pretty big company say, I want to do it. My team doesn't do it. What should I do? And I said, do it. You know the things to do. Start to, suggest this thing here. I love asking questions, and I'm a huge fan of planting seeds. So there are things that you can do that are accessibility related and accessibility focused. And I'm thinking overall inclusion, because we need to think about that from a perspective too. Not everybody has the latest smartphone. Not everybody has the fastest Wi-Fi in the United States. More than half of the country does not have high-speed internet. So when we're thinking about all these things that we need to do, why do you have to say those words? You don't necessarily have to. So I only give advice if I'm asked for it. But if somebody were asking me, I would say approach it from a different perspective where you don't necessarily have to say the word, but you could think about, hey, how are we doing readability and legibility? How are we thinking about information architecture? And how are we organizing this page? Are we making sure we have the right headers here? There are things that you can do in order to facilitate accessibility without necessarily saying the words, because what I have found with people, we live in a very ableist society, and I don't care what country you're from. Everybody has, every culture I've seen has some form of ableism, and that translates into the workplace. We don't want to do accessibility. Well, we don't care about those people. You don't until you do, right? Somebody doesn't care until they broke their arm and all of a sudden their dominant hand they can't use anymore, and it changes their perspective on the way they approach their work. This is what I've heard, from people is like the perspective only changes when it impacts them personally. And the thing, let me just say this real quick.
Go for it.
The thing about disability, no one escapes it.
Yes.
No one gets away from it. It is something that impacts every single person. So when you are saying that you don't want to design for it, you don't even want to design for yourself. That's how I see it.
We're not advocating to break product managers' arms on this podcast, so I hope that people don't get the wrong message. But I love that statement you said, Reginé. I think I had Stephanie Walker who came on the show, and she mentioned to me at one point, everybody is going to get old. Everybody is going to lose their eyesight, or have some form of, need of having products that need to be accessible as we start to fully move into this digital, fully digital age. And I love that statement because, I think that's, it ties into what you just mentioned as well. Accessibility doesn't hit people until they need it or something happens to them and stuff like that. And I'm going to take another stab at something. Now, and I'm also culprit to this. It's not like I would say that other people only do this. But I've noticed that sometimes following accessible guidelines does detriment the UI graphic design elements of a website. So let me say my thing. I can see you're waiting to answer this.
I'm listening.
Okay.
Actively listening.
But I mean, there are strict guidelines, and sometimes it can detriment that graphic design element to the page, which a lot of designers put that attention to the pixels. We do put attention a lot to the line heights, the spacings, the number of words in a line. I hope people still do that on the golden ratio. I hope so. But sometimes it can detriment some of the graphic design elements. Now, what would you say to that statement I just said?
I think constraints make people creative.
Okay.
I do.
Do you want to elaborate on that? On that?
I do. I think when people if you have a smaller space I think about when you talked about responsive design, which designers who are new They just do responsive design. But let's say for those who are in the audience, there was a time when you only designed for a desktop, right?
Yeah. Oh my
And
God.
then people are like, oh, we have these, smartphones. We need to start designing for those. And I recall being at a company where they were just so anti mobile first.
Okay.
And, we had massive, sales in Asia. And I said, in Asia, they're using their mobile devices more than like folks in America and the US. We need to do the numbers don't lie, right?
Yeah.
And it did force us to think about how, the imagery we were using, the words we were using, how things, when they get translated, would be on a smaller screen. It did make us more creative. And that's why I say, like, a constraint can actually make you more creative, in my opinion.
I like that. I do like the answer because, yeah, I remember the days when it was just desktop. It was
Yeah,
a lot of
and it
fun.
was a fight. It was a fight to get mobile.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, I
it
remember.
was so hard for me. I'm like,
it was
hey,
it was crazy. And I mean, I still do the same thing with Design Ops Align in some sense, and I still do the same thing with also our new app that we just sent out. This is just me plugging. So I'm doing a bit of plugging here. But I tend to do that. I tend to design for desktop first. I don't know why. I think it's just old habits. And then I try and refactor down because I don't know. I find if I have a wider retail space, then it lets me be a bit more creative with the constraint of the retail space for mobile, and it actually gets a bit more creative on the content that you use, and try and reduce as much as you can. I hope nobody goes onto my portfolio website. It looks like crap at the moment. So,
and having design systems, people don't know how lucky they are,
oh
right? Because
yes,
back
oh
in the
yes,
day, you were creating every little
yeah,
button
yeah,
over and over. So
yeah.
there was no none of that. So there's again, technology changes things, but I think as designers, our gift is to be creative regardless of what we are given.
Mhm.
And when people say they can't design something because of XYZ, it makes me say maybe you could strengthen your imagination a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I think that is one area where we, and I mean the collective we, are a little weak because we
Okay.
don't use our imagination as much as we used to because everything is so easy and right there. So where does the imagination come from? Right? And that's where I think we get limited. And when we talk about the use of AI, I think AI is cool. I think it also limits our imagination a little bit too,
But
because
then,
people like to be given the answer instead of thinking about one.
well, I mean, we have changed in the last year with our critical thinking. I think, critical thinking has gone completely out the window, in my opinion. But I'm glad you brought up the bit about AI. I mean, do you think that now with AI coming full and hard on everything that we're using, that the ideas of accessibility restraints on the UI are going to be less because you can get an AI to read your webpage now, and you can get AI to do a lot of things that can help on the accessibility front. So
Mhm.
do you think we're going to move away from making the UI more accessible and having more agents or AI do most of the accessibility work for us?
Not yet, in
Mm-hmm.
part because AI, and I wrote about this in my book, but AI data sets don't necessarily, they're not as complete in terms of including folks with disabilities in the data sets. So there is some missing information. There is nothing like getting your product in front of a real life person with lived experience, right? So when you actually get to see somebody using your product and you go, oh, they went there. I didn't think they'd go, that's not how I designed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're putting it into a system, it may just follow the logic that you put in,
Yeah.
right? So that's not necessarily the way someone would use it. So I
Yeah.
think, again, I can't advocate enough for actually testing with real people
Mhm.
when you get the chance to. And I know not everybody does. Not everybody has the time,
Well,
nor
that's
resources, nor money to do so.
well. I'm glad you mentioned that bit, and I'm not going to name names. But during my time of when I was working in the design front, and we wanted to test with users who did have some form of, can I say the word disability?
Disability is a great word.
Cool. If they had some form of disability, it was very, very hard for these recruitment companies to find test subjects who matched the disability that we were looking for, like color blindness or hard of seeing, or had used who was purely using keyboards and stuff like that. Do you think now the market has changed now that you can find those test subjects in those pools
Yep.
to test out? Okay.
There are companies that do it, for sure. And I think that everyone knows someone, right? And I
True.
say, everyone knows someone. And if you, uh, for folks who wear glasses, take your glasses off and
Mm-hmm.
use something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's lots of people who have visible and invisible disabilities in our everyday life, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that gets overlooked a lot of times. But I think there's always, test with your older relatives. If you want to
Okay.
see if something works or not, and
Yeah.
anyone who has older relatives in their life, because they're usually the IT support for them, go test with them and see if they could use it. If they could use it, then probably a lot of people could use it as well, right?
Oh,
Because
that's
so
a
that's it. I mean, I'm just saying people overlook that all the time, but
wow.
most folks have some older relatives in their life.
Absolutely. I really overlooked that. I think because as mentioned, we're the technical support for all these old relatives that we kind of saying, well, they're not going to actually know what my product is or XYZ. So I mean, I'm glad you brought that one up. That's a really cool one. It
Yeah.
really does get
You'd be like,
overlooked.
oh yeah, I had to help my mom. My mom locked herself out of her phone, didn't know how to and then I had to help her. Right. So have her test the thing that you want, see if she could do it. I mean,
No,
it works. Like,
that's
oh,
true. Very, very true.
that's not working.
um I'm going to take another question. So a lot of people who do, how can I put this in a better way? It can be overwhelming to know where to start when it comes to accessibility or learning it. What advice would you give to people who don't know nothing right now, but are in this design field? Where would you tell them to start?
I think YouTube is, oh, can I say that? Can I say
Yeah,
that?
yeah, of course it can. Yeah, you can say
Okay.
YouTube.
I was like, wait, YouTube. I think YouTube is great. I think that um, there are so many free resources out there.
Hmm.
And to go, you just Google it and find. And there's some great things on YouTube. I find YouTube to be such a plethora. And depending too on what it is you're trying to do, because there are specific things people might be looking for, and you just go intro to accessibility, right? You type that in and lots of things will come up for you, and that'll give you your start. Once you start getting into it, play and discover, right? And I think that's something people are like, oh, I got to learn this thing. Then it becomes like, oh, it's so hard. Okay, things are hard when we say they're hard. They are what
Hmm.
we say they are. Or it's boring. Well, I have a friend, my friend's mom said, if you're bored, you're boring, right? So it's like, okay, then make it fun, right? Again, be creative. You're a designer. You don't have to have something be boring.
Hmm.
You
No,
could
that's true.
actually make something be fun and designy and do it in your own ways. Like I like whenever I go to like a talk or something, I make ridiculous amounts of notes. I like to draw in my
Hmm.
notes. Depends on if I have my phone or my iPad. I like to, draw and write. And for me, even if something is boring-ish. I make it fun because I'm making drawings in my notes and I'm going to type this up later and then I'll, share it socially or whatever. So I think that you can make your learning process of something that may not be like the most exciting subject a little bit fun.
Is
I'm
there?
encouraging a fun. We need to have
I
more
mean,
fun.
you should have fun. I mean, actually, I like that. I like you mentioned that. Actually, I actually moved into design from development. I was actually a designer by trade, but I was the unicorn where you do both. But I really enjoyed design. And when you enjoy something, it isn't really called work. I always used to say that to people. If you enjoy what you do, it's really just called turning up, and you're just having fun all day long because all you have that passion where you're doing stuff where you really enjoy it. So you don't even wake up with a Monday morning feeling. Reggie, I wanted to delve in back on what you just mentioned about education. Is there like certificates that people can get by learning accessibility that is kind of looked at in the industry and does give people some emphasis on their CV? And the reason why I'm asking you this is a lot of people right now with the saturated market and SME saturation as well are now looking at certificates to boost their CVs. Would you say there's anything that could help them?
Yeah, so there's the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, the IAAP, and they
Hmm.
offer certifications for developers, and they also offer like a more general certification for like a generalist around accessibility. I'm a holder of one of these certifications, and so it's something you have to study for. And I know that's not for everyone. And certificates are not for everyone. But what you
Yeah,
can
true.
do is you can do a side project where you say, you know what, I saw this thing, I wanted to make it more accessible, I built it. I put it on Dribble. I did this thing, I put it out. I'm a big fan of putting stuff on Figma community, right? So like
Oh,
go
nice.
and put your stuff out there so other people can see it and they can use it. And you're not just in this vacuum of your own world as a
Yeah.
way to, if you're not a certificate person, some people don't have the money for it. Some people want to get the experience. I am a fan of putting your stuff out there so then it could be someone else's, right, to use.
Um, nice. I like
Yeah.
that. So, Reginé, I heard that you've got a book coming out soon. I think is it June next year, from my
So I,
understanding.
I, I have three.
You've three
Yeah.
books coming out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
for next year, or you've got three books that you've
So
done already?
can I pull up my book? Because I actually
Sure, of
I
course you
got the
can.
physical book
Sure.
yesterday. So this is the second edition of my first book. This is the second edition of my first book. It is
Nice.
quite big. It is like double the size of the first edition. So this is my first book. I'm very proud of this book, and I had a lot of help and really grateful for the opportunity to have a second edition of my first book, Inclusive Design for a Digital World, which is also translated into Japanese, by the way.
Oh,
My
wow.
second book is a textbook, and it's called Human Spatial Computing. And that book is through Oxford University Press. It's expected out February of 2026.
Okay.
And that book is I co-authored with Doug Northcook, who runs his own like VR gaming studio, and it's about the human side of AR and VR. And again, it's a textbook, so it's more built for the classroom, but anybody could also use it as well.
Okay.
And then the third book is Digital Accessibility Ethics. I'm a contributor and an editor, and it is with Lainey Feingold
Oh,
and
wow.
Chancey Fleet
Yeah.
and me are the editors for this book. We had 39 different authors, including the three of us. It's 32 chapters, and the subject matters in that book range from AI to PR to smart cities. I wrote about AR and VR. Lainey wrote about law. Um, and so there are a plethora of authors and subjects for that particular book, which has been a lot. So in the last 4 years, I have worked on 3 different books. So it's been
Wow.
a journey. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will have all the links to Reginé's books in our show notes. We would love to hear any comments that have resonated with you from today's podcast. Please drop them in. We'll pass those questions over to Reginé, and we'll try and answer them as much as possible. But yeah, links will be down below in the show notes below. And we hope to see that book flourish. I hope to get one on my shelf over here, so I'm looking forward to adding it to my collection. I've got such a massive collection at the moment from all the guests I've come onto the show. Reginé, we're coming up to the last bit of the show, and I wanted to get your take on this. Very provocative question. And I do like to poke the bear now and then with these type of things. But do you think in the next, like, we'll say in the next 3 years, that I'm going to put it in a nicer way. Do you think the pressure of accessibility is going to rise or fall in the next 3 years? And the reason why I asked this is because I was expecting a bit more of a push when the EU Accessibility Act came in. To be honest, I've only seen two or three postings about people getting fines, and I wanted to get your take on this before I give my feedback on it. What's your take on this?
I mean, I would love to. I want to know what you have to say as well. So I would say in the next 3 years, I think we will see an increase in organizations working to comply with the European Accessibility Act. It's not a official law. It is it is a standard that people have agreed to, right? And so, check your legal things. I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on that. But I know that the enforcement of it is where there's a gap, I think, right now of like, how is this being enforced? And therefore people are not, unless something is being enforced, you don't really know what happens if we don't do this thing. However, I know of some bigger companies that are like, we are doing it. We are going to comply. We are working on it. We're working on the planning. So I think we're going to see an increase in the next 3 years of people's awareness around accessibility. I think we will see more accessible, and I hope we'll see more accessible websites. And I think too, because I'm from the United States, we have a very fast aging population happening. By the year 2034, we'll have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 65. So things are going to need to be made accessible regardless of what people's feelings are at the moment. So I think over the next 3 years, we are going to see things shift. Especially people are gamers are getting older. People are getting, if we are lucky, we get older. And when we get older, things change. And again, everybody gets impacted by disability in one way or another. And every single one of us is temporarily, non-disabled.
Yeah.
But I want to hear from you.
Wow. Okay. My thoughts. I think the pressure will not happen due to the fact that a lot of product teams are now slowly moving into some form of agentic AI in their enterprise solutions. So what used to be 3 or 4 features every month, every quarter, now becomes 15 features or 20 features, and they're trying to push out very, very quick. I personally think that a lot of companies will try and fly under the radar and would only jump onto it once they get caught. And that's when they kind of take action. It's like, okay, I got caught now I have to deal with the fine. And those large enterprise organizations can deal with the fine. So those are the ones that are going to keep flying underneath the net and seeing, and that's just me. This is just my personal opinion. I think it's the middle layer companies that are going to get stung the most and who are going to have the heat on them because they can't pay the fine. They can't afford a dent into their P&L from a fine like this. And that's where I think small companies and medium companies are going to adapt to it more than these large organizations, these large enterprise organizations. And I think by having a bottom up approach, you will then see people seeing the benefits of being accessible, because they'll be showing the return of investment of catering to these people. And then these large organizations will see, well, oh my God, we did not take that market gap. We are missing that market gap. And all the small players are doing it. And that's when we need to start taking it. And that's what I personally perceive. I perceive the fines are not going to happen that are going to make detrimental effects on enterprise solution. They're going to go for bottom down and have a bottom up approach. What's your thoughts on my answer?
I think we're going to wait and see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
honestly, we're going to wait and see. It's been an interesting time just to see what's happening globally, where laws are applied, and where in the United States, if your website is not accessible and you get sued, you could possibly lose millions.
Yes. That's
right.
That's why
and that's one of the things. So I think that just today I was reading about a lawsuit, and it's like, wow, this is something that could have been fixed. And oftentimes instead of fixing it, they'll fight it, which that's also a choice.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I kind of make the assumption that these enterprise solutions just don't care. Do you know what I mean? It is the middle layers. It's these small to medium companies who are going to get the finger pointed at them. And again, once they do start to get the ball rolling and they start to cater to that market gap, that is when I think enterprise solutions start to see, oh, wow, we missed out on a big thing by not catering to our market gap, because it all comes down to money. It really does come down to money.
Yes. And if it does come down to money, you can make more money when you make things more accessible and inclusive.
Exactly.
I mean, that's to me, when people say, oh, I can't do it, or I don't want to do it, I said, then you don't want to make more money. Make that make sense.
But that's what I think. That's what we mentioned. That's why I'm glad we brought that up. I'm glad we brought that up in our discussion, due to the fact that it's always thought about only from a production perspective, but not from a P&L perspective. Do you know what I mean? Everyone thinks of accessibility from a product manager all the way down to a designer, the production costs. They don't think about the return of investment. Do you know? And that's what I think is lacking. I think personally, as I mentioned, if you're able to present data to show the return on investment, ears open like crazy when you speak about money in corporate, because, again, that's what everyone cares about. At the same time, what I also want to mention also in this podcast, and I think we've spoke about this as well, is that if you are an advocate for accessibility, you can't come in guns blazing, because you won't get that trust behind you. And I always say to people, if you're going to change something inside an organization, you have to build up that political capital and trust behind you to make influential decisions. I always say this to anyone who joins a team: don't go in like a cowboy and just say everything needs to be changed. You have to build up enough political capital to gain trust, and then you can pitch ideas like accessibility. Now, what's your take on that?
Well, I think we all work within these systems, right? I am a systems thinker, and I think within systems, you cannot go into an organization or be new to a team and say, we need to do this. I've been that person. Nobody liked me, okay? I've been that person where I was like, we have to make everything accessible. And it was like, no, we're not doing it, right? So then I realized, what could I could I do, right?
Yeah.
And so I agree that you can't come in saying, hey, we're doing this thing. No, you have to ease into it. You have to understand the system that you're coming into. You have to understand the hierarchy of the team. You have to understand what their priorities are at the moment, how they're working, and how can you plant little seeds to where you can bring in accessibility, inclusion, and thoughts of thinking bigger than what you currently do. You can't just be like, oh, we want this tree to grow, but you got to plant the seeds first. I say planning, and I say planning is planting.
Yeah,
planning is planting.
You can plant seeds, but if you don't have the water, which I believe is political capital, you really can spread seeds, but you do need that water to make an effect. And I believe political capital, which is another word for trust and influence, is key to making changes. And welcome to my world. I'm a design ops specialist. You know, our job is to come in and to change everything and say everything's wrong. And it's like, you know, nobody really likes us when we first come in, but when you slowly come in, and especially as a consultancy, time is of the essence. You know, time is against you as a consultant. You've got to do it in ways that basically shows, again, the return of investment over, you know, changing some of the process or changing the ways of thinking or bringing in something that's completely new. So, and
I say, if you bring in one thing this sprint and try it.
Yeah.
Right. Bring one thing in and try it and see how it goes. Adding one thing is not going to hopefully be that detrimental if you got a nice workflow going.
No, that's true. That's very, very true. Reginé, to our audience, how can they get in touch with you if they want to find out more information?
Oh, yeah. So you can visit my website, reginegilbert.com. And I am pretty active on LinkedIn. I like to post just, you know, if I'm in my feelings or if I'm going somewhere, I will, you know, I like to post and share. So I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn. And yeah, I appreciate you listening and being on this show today. It's been fun.
Oh, brilliant. Again, we'll put your LinkedIn profile on our show notes. You know, everything that you just mentioned, again, please drop your comments down below if anything's resonated with you or any questions you want to ask Reginé. I did get the name right, did I? I know that you have a special way, but
no, it is Reginé. That's right.
Reginé, okay.
Yeah.
But please fire her any questions. Again, she does post on LinkedIn, and she is very vocal about this. And we would love to hear any of the comments that's resonated, or anything that has resonated with you with this podcast. And I'm glad you kicked off season 3 with this topic. I'm really glad you came onto the show today. So
thank you. It was fun.
We're looking forward. I'm looking forward to the release, and I think the whole team is looking forward to getting back onto this podcasting aspect. So we're looking forward to seeing what comes out. And please, you know, let's have you back on the show after your book is released.
Oh yeah, thank you.